Hey there everyone, this is a Big Marsh Dog coming to you live from RTH Studios with another episode of EOI Review. Everything you need to know to pass those pesky little slimy, sleazy, end of instruction U.S. history exams. Now, in the last episode we talked about the United States mustering itself, getting ready for war, moving away from neutrality. We replaced the Neutrality Act of 1935 with the Neutrality Act of 1939, which allowed us to sell weapons and munitions to Britain. We talked about the rise of the threat of the Axis powers of Italy, Japan, and Nazi Germany going on the offensive around the entire world, basically attacking sites all over the Pacific and, of course, in Europe. And we talked about the United States bolstering its defenses by passing the Selective Service Act, allowing us to start drafting millions of men into the, eventual conflict, if it were to come about. And of course, FDR preparing and running and winning a third term as President of the United States. Unprecedented. So in this episode, we're going to look into what comes to be known as the arsenal of democracy. Now, FDR goes on the radio with one of his many fireside addresses to the nation, and he states that it is impossible to negotiate with Adolf Hitler. In particular, Hitler, who at this time was, of course, bombarding Britain during the Battle of Britain over the English Channel, basically just trying to bomb them into submission. He knew the past track record of Britain and France, the League of Nations, trying to negotiate with Hitler. It was just a failure every single time. And FDR was very specific, and he said if we allow Britain to fall, the Axis powers are going to be allowed to go on unchecked and conquer much of the world. So he said the United States has to help defeat this Axis threat, even if we do not get involved in this war directly. So he and Winston Churchill, the British Prime Minister, both came right out and said the United States is the great arsenal of democracy. Now, of course, the problem with this is under the conditions of our previous, our cash carry policy, Britain very quickly ran out of cash. And when Britain ran out of cash, they could no longer buy these materials, these war materials, and carry them away in their own ships like they were supposed to. So we replace the cash carry policy with something that comes to be known as the Lend-Lease Act. Now, under the terms of this agreement, we basically just lent destroyers, ships, things that Britain needed to them in exchange for 99-year leases on British naval bases in several parts of the world. Now, not long after this, something very interesting happened, and I want to be very clear on this. We knew how evil of a man Stalin was, that he was this awful, totalitarian, communist dictator. But in June of 1941, Hitler broke his 10-year pact, his non-aggression pact with Joseph Stalin, because Hitler just couldn't take it anymore. I mean, he was sitting there running these bombing raids over Britain, and they weren't getting him anywhere. He had the largest, most powerful army imaginable, and he wasn't able to do anything with it. So Stalin had been giving Hitler all of the materials he needed to wage war in Western Europe, selling them to him. But Hitler wanted control of these resources. And of course, if Stalin had bothered to read Mein Kampf, he would have known that Hitler wanted to destroy communism. And at that time, that basically meant the Soviet Union. So, in a sudden sneak attack, the Nazis launched their invasion of Russia. And it is working very well. But as soon as Hitler attacked Stalin, we immediately extended these same offers to the Soviet Union. Said, anything you need, we're happy to sell it to you. And of course, what Stalin's response was, what we really need for you to do is attack Hitler. We're not ready to do that yet. But Roosevelt did agree with Winston Churchill. Winston Churchill, in giving a speech in the House of Commons, did say if Hitler invaded hell, I'd at least make a favorable reference to Satan in the House of Commons. In other words, I'd be willing to work with the devil himself if he were fighting Hitler. But It's not like Hitler's gonna just sit back and let all of these supplies and stuff get to our allies in Britain. To prevent the delivery of these shipments, Hitler deployed hundreds of those German U-boats, those submarines, to attack these shipping lanes that our vessels would have to go through. And this becomes known as the Wolf Pack, the German Wolf Pack, where you got groups of these submarines, some of them more than 40 submarines, patrolling the North Atlantic, where all these convoys that are delivering these goods to Britain would be expected to go. And they were sinking as much as 350 tons of shipments in a single month. So they were pretty destructive. But in June of 1941, Roosevelt grants the United States Navy permission to attack these German U-boats if it was a matter of self-defense. And we've of course got these vessels protecting our cargo ships. And of course, we've got anti-submarine patrols flying around, sailing around these ships as well, escorting these things to Europe. So although the United States is not involved in the war yet, it's getting mighty, mighty hairy. And we'll pick up with what goes on with this, FDR's plans for war, the Atlantic Charter, all of that stuff in the next episode. So if you like this content, find it useful, just like, subscribe, and we'll catch you in the next episode of EOI Review.